Coffee Pot Conversations.
Hello and welcome to episode 2.4, the Paris Olympics part 2. This is my take on the Paris Olympics rather than my view of the Paris Olympics. Pretty much, I listened to some feedback and people were saying, you've not actually covered the Olympics really, you just, chatted about what happened with you, and I understand that, so I thought I'd do a quick little special episode. Before I carry on though, I do want to place an apology or an announcement, an adjustment. Last episode, 2.3, the Paris Olympics, I mentioned the fact that I went to the market with Nev and the boys on the Saturday. It was in fact the Sunday, so it was a Sunday market. I just wanted to clarify that. So it was a Sunday market. And where was that Sunday market? It was on Rue de la Sierre in the 14th. Don't get confused with the La Sierre market on the 13th. This one was a junction of Rue de la Sierre and Avenue Villemain. It was just a little fruit, veg, cheese and bread market. I think they had seafood there as well. Just honestly, really little market, maybe a dozen stalls. But it was nice. It was just a really nice little kind of market. Anyway, so that's the market that was open on the Sunday rather than the Saturday when I went and ordered those cherries and a beef tomato. So the news this week, a little bit melancholic. Sunday the 18th, at the age of 88, actor Alain Delon passed away. Politicians, film stars, commentators and members of the public commented on the actor's legacy both in France and around the world. This does include, obviously, Emmanuel Macron. Marine Le Pen, leader of the far-right, Rassemblement National, said, "A small part of the France we love leaves with him." Alain Delon was an icon of the cinema who the whole world is mourning. And that was from the French Communist Party leader, Fabien Roussel. Mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, said he was a giant and he left his mark on people's minds and hearts. Now, I've got to admit, I don't really know this chap, but flicking through Instagram, a lot of people knew him and were affected by his films and obviously by his passing. Now, there was a lot of controversy surrounding him and his children, but, we're going to let the man rest in peace. Except his dog, we've been told, won't be euthanised and laid to rest with him at this time. So that is the passing of Alain Delon. Day after, on August the 19th, Michel Girard, the French chef who held 3 Michelin stars for a record 47 years, also died. He was aged 91. They say he was one of the most successful and influential French pioneers of the 20th century, as well as being one of the pioneers of Nouvelle Cuisine. And that was in the 1970s. He was actually the first chef to appear on the iconic cover of Time magazine in the United States, and his flagship restaurant, Le Pré d'Eugénie, is in the spa resort of Eugénie-les-Bains. He first won the coveted highest accolade of 3 Michelin stars in 1977, and as I said, he held it for 47 years until his death. The UK Michelin Guide, which as we call it in the UK, Michelin Guide, posted a tribute stating, "It is with great sadness that we learn of the passing of Michel Girard, the poet of French gastronomy. His innovative approach to cooking and talent for passing on his know-how have had a profound impact on several generations of Michelin Guide inspectors." Not as melancholic, but still, teachers picket an elite Parisian school due to a tuition fee U-turn, and it's to do with the €39,000 a year American School of Paris. They withdrew their free schooling for the families of staff. Yeah, that's not a good move. Essentially, that's someone's salary. A high proportion of the school's teachers are recruited from abroad, and they're drawn in by part with the promise of enrolling their own children in an exclusive establishment for free. But this perk was abruptly withdrawn and replaced with an offer of a 30% discount, according to Connection France. The directors of the school are essentially given extra pay to fund their children's education in the school. However, the union, the SNP-EFP-CGT, said the school could have put in place a system of scholarships to allow teachers to enrol their children, which is a solution used in other international schools. Now, one thing I found a little strange, as we know, I started a new job, my current job, just as episode 1.9, A Conversation with Jasper, was released. And it's a 9 to 5... I work 9 to 5, roughly. 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. The core hours, which means that you have to work, are between 10 and 4. Now, I can start work at 10 and finish at 7, or I can start work at 6 and finish at 4. It makes no difference. There's that little bit of flexibility there. But between 10 and 4 are the core hours. I work 9 to 5. Now, if my boss was to send me a message at 8 o'clock at night, it's like, no, sorry, I've finished work. If they were to send me a message, I don't know, Saturday evening, no. Sunday afternoon, no. I don't work. That's my cut-off point. Once I've signed off the computer, which will be 5, 6 o'clock, worst case, or it's the weekend, which I don't work at the weekends, then I don't do work. Now, that's sort of how it was with my previous job. That was a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And for jobs prior to that, where I worked shifts, if things took place outside of my shift, then no, don't get in contact with me, because there's nothing that I can do. I'm not working. Similarly, why are you working? Now, if you're working a structured pattern outside of conventional hours, then that's fine. Don't expect me to respond to you. But you can't say to me, don't respond, and then you're doing things outside of those hours. You have ways of scheduling emails. Don't text my phone, because my phone, if it's a work phone, it's off. If it's my personal phone, don't text my personal phone, because I'm not working. And that's how it, in theory, should be. Now, how this came about is because in France, they still have what they call bad habits. And since 2017, French labour law has included the right to disconnect. It's a measure that the UK government are now also considering. This is according to The Guardian. The law, which applies to companies with more than 50 workers, obliges businesses to clearly define normal working hours and set out policies around work communications negotiated with employees, and allows workers to be unreachable or to not reply when work is over. Other European countries, including Belgium, Spain and Italy, have since followed suit. There is a term going about all to do with well-being at work for staff, and if anybody wishes to discuss this on a more academic level, feel free to email me, and we'll call it wellbeing@anenglishmaninparis.blog. And the reason I can do that is because, as I say, I know someone that's heavily involved in this field, and it's something that's not going to go away. It does need to be addressed. So please, if you're feeling overwhelmed or under-respected, if that's the right word, not looked after enough as a member of staff, then please do email in wellbeing@anenglishmaninparis.blog, and we can discuss this matter at greater length. It's not a problem at all. However, I just do want to say that where I am in my current employment, it's not an issue at all. I know that some people do go off with stress, but I've not faced that problem. I'd like to think that, if things were getting a bit bad, then I would be looked after. And talking about being looked after, there's no connection at all. It's a really poor link. But the EES, the entry-exit system that the EU are implementing for all of us that don't live in the EU anymore, they're going to travel into the EU. We are going to be having to use this system from the 10th of November. Now, I've got a friend that I used to go to university with. We call him Uncle Taff, and it's Taff's birthday. So, Taff, happy birthday, November the 10th. Oh, that's almost a freebie. Birthday at anenglishmaninparis.blog. Email me on your birthday. I'll give you a shout. Anyway, so November the 10th, they say, the EU bloc, that they're going to start the transition. They say it's going to be like a 6-month easy process. Good luck with that. Whereby they suspect there's going to be like a 4-hour delay, and you've got to have your fingerprints taken, you've got to have your photo taken, you're going to have retina scans, you're going to have your temperature taken, you're going to have a probe shoved up. I'm joking, it's just, I think your fingerprints to photograph, and that's it. So how they're saying it's going to be extra time and that, yes, it will be for the initial one, but then just walk through. But anyway, I will let you know how it goes, as I am planning a trip just a few weeks after the initial launch date, which they finally finalised, possibly, may still change. Up until this point, it's November the 10th. I will be going 2-3 weeks after that and making a report. So, again, organically, yep, everything's changed for my episode structure. Talking of episode structure, Rory, sing us into 2.4 Paris Olympics Part 2.
Coffee Pot Conversations.
So, the Paris Olympics ran from Friday the 26th of July through to Sunday the 11th of August. Except there were actually events taking place on the 24th of July. So that'll be the Wednesday before the opening ceremony on the Friday. And as previously mentioned in the last episode 2.3, the Paris Olympics, I didn't see the opening ceremony. So I actually waited until I got home. I had some spare time, and I thought, right, I'm going to watch it. It was through Discovery Plus channel, and I watched it. I made some notes, did a little bit of digging around, and the following section is all about what I sort of half remembered and what took place. So, first of all, just a quick little rundown of some informational facts that 12 masked torchbearers took part during the 4-hour live ceremony. It was the first time the opening ceremony took place outside of the stadium and paraded on boats. Just under 160 boats and barges were used, with 6,800 athletes on board. 104,000 paid tickets and 222,000 free tickets were issued, prioritising families on low incomes from underprivileged areas, sports clubs, schools, volunteers and also local workers. And finally, 3,000 performers took part, and 400 of which were professional. The opening ceremony started at 7:30 at Austerlitz Bridge next to Jardin des Plantes, which is probably my favourite jardin in Paris, because at the bottom, cutting across past the museum right at the end, taking a little bit of a left and sort of on the right, is the Grande Mosque. And I love having their mint tea, sitting down and doing some writing. It's nice and chilled and relaxed vibe, slightly with a Moroccan, almost Casablanca feel. Yep, episode 1.6 from last season, Casablanca. Anyway, so it started around 7:30, and obviously rain was all taking place as to be expected. And we know we've got several firsts coming up because obviously it's not in the stadium, it's down the River Seine. So we're presented with a provision that wasn't actually there at the time, but it was Lady Gaga and her 8 dancers that were wearing Dior costumes. Obviously it was a pre-recorded segment. Mon truc en plus. Hence the large pink ostrich feather hand fans that her dancers and herself were carrying. This was at the southeast part of Ile Saint-Louis. Carrying on, obviously boats are still coming past and everyone's waving flags and we're getting told who's who from which team and who the flag bearers are. And we then have Moulin Rouge dancers dressed in pink, and they danced at the Quai d'Orléans. And that was quite nice. I think I recognised one of the chaps. They sort of hovered the camera over him. You almost see him counting time. 80 dancers on the stage. And up he went and down into the splits. Very reminiscent of when I saw him with Nev at the Moulin Rouge. And we then moved on to 420 people dancing to the tribute of the Notre Dame reconstruction and artisans in general. This section of the parade also made reference to the making of the medals and the Louis Vuitton cases that carried them in. The medals were made at the Monnaie de Paris, and that's the oldest continuously running minting institution in the world. If you go onto my Instagram page, look at the 2nd of January 2022, you'll see that there is a photo of a €1 coin, or an euro, and just to let you know that the coins and banknotes were introduced to France over 20 years ago. Whilst the euro existed for 3 years prior, it was only deemed as book money. Franc coins could be exchanged at banks until the 17th of February 2005, whilst notes were allowed to be exchanged until the 17th of February 2012. Dual tender actually ended on the 17th of February 2002. And it's at the Monnaie de Paris that the euro coins for France are minted. At the conciergerie, a beheaded Marie Antoinette sang the opening notes of "Ah, ça ira," meaning "it will be fine." It's a song from the French Revolution with lyrics inspired by Benjamin Franklin's customary response when asked about the American Revolution during his time in France. "Ah, ça ira, it will be fine, it will be fine." The song became a rallying cry during the Revolution and has endured as a noted song from that time. The author of the original words was a former soldier by the name of Ladré, who made a living as a street singer. That's according to Wikipedia. Also, according to Wikipedia, it first became popular as a work song during the preparation for the Fête de la Fédération of 1790 and eventually became recognised as an unofficial anthem of revolutionaries. The music is a popular contredanse called La Carillon Nationale and was composed by Bécor of the Theatre Beaujolais. Apparently Queen Marie Antoinette herself is said to have often played the music on her harpsichord. And what is contredanse? It is the repeated execution of a predefined sequence of figures carefully designed to fit a fixed length of music, performed by a group of people, usually in couples, in one or more sets. The figures involve interaction with your partner and or with other dancers, usually with a progression so that you dance with everyone in your set. It's common in modern times to have a caller who teaches a dance, then calls the figures as you dance. As a musical form written in 2/4 or 6/8 time, the contredanse was used by Beethoven and Mozart, and it was introduced to South America by French immigrants, where it had a great influence upon Latin American music as contradanza or contradanza. It was popular in Spain and spread throughout Spanish America during the 18th century. In Cuba, during the 19th century, it became an important genre and the first written music to be rhythmically based on the African rhythm pattern, and the first Cuban dance to gain international popularity, the progenitor of danzón, mambo and cha-cha-cha. Carrying down the river and in the salle ovale of the Richelieu site of the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, at least 9 books of French literature were on display, ranging from Les Amants Magnifiques by Molière through Les Liaisons Dangereuses by Pierre Chadallos de Laclos, Romance sans Parole by Paul-Marie Valin, and on to Sexe et Mensonge by Leila Slimani. French Marlin singer Aya Nakamura, along with the choir of the French Army and soldiers of the Republican Guard, performed on the Pont des Arts outside the Institut de France. It was formidable. More boats passing by, and then there was a strange collection of animated sequences from the Louvre to the Musée d'Orsay. This led us on to a finale of Axel Saint-Cyril, wearing a Dior tricolor dress on top of the Grand Palais, singing La Marseillaise, representing Marianne, the personification of the French Republic. More boats, more views of the Seine and the athletes, and there were 10 statues that were planned to raise along the Seine during the 6th sequence, highlighting sororité. Unfortunately, Simone de Beauvoir's statue failed to rise from the water. In later seasons, I shall be attempting to cover her, because she is one of Nev's favourites, and I've seen her tombstone twice now. After the first Polish artist to perform at an Olympic opening ceremony finished, it was singer Jakub Józef Orlański. He also did a little breakdancing. But after that, we were subjected to a fashion parade, dancing on a disco-lit barge, and Philippe Catherine, now dubbed the Singing Smurf, as a tribute to Dionysus, in a tribute to France's wine industry, whilst onlookers felt it was more of a reimagining of The Last Supper by Da Vinci. Finally, we had Juliette Armanet singing Imagine, accompanied by a burning piano. Just then, we had a masked rider in shining silver armour riding a horse down the Seine. Some say it was Joan of Arc, others alluded to Sequana, the Gallo-Roman goddess of the River Seine. There were 2 people under the hood of Sequana at the Olympics. The one on the Seine riding the mechanical horse was Breton Morgane Suchat, who designed the trimaran that carried the horse. She is a naval architect and a navigator. And the second real-life horse rider, it was a real-life horse and she rode it, was a non-commissioned officer of the National Gendarmerie, Florian Isse. Thomas Bach and President Macron did their bit, and the 33rd Olympians of modern times was declared open. Keeping the pace slowed down, the torch was given back by the masked torchbearer, who we'd seen clips of zigzagging over the rooftops of Paris throughout the whole procession. He gave it back to Zinedine Zidane, who appeared in a pre-recorded sequence right at the beginning of the ceremony. The torch was handed over to different sporting personalities a few times. Some lights, music and Olympic champions followed, including 100-year-old gold medal winning Charles Coste, who is the oldest living French Olympic champion to have taken gold at the London 1948 Summer Olympics in the cycling team pursuits. Finally, the Olympic cauldron was lit, and the hot air balloon reminding us of the French feat by the Montgolfier brothers, whilst being the first Olympic cauldron not to be lit by fossil fuels. And from the first floor of the Eiffel Tower, Celine Dion sang us out with Hymne à l'amour. So that was the opening ceremony taken care of. Now, I'm going to talk about the security aspect, which was fairly prominent during the day and the evenings outside of the venues, but less visible in other parts of Paris. At the gate, it wasn't as strict as I thought it would be. and inside it was barely there. Bag searching is never truly thorough, in my opinion, and that's sort of everywhere. I was only frisked once out of the 3 visits, and that was also the same for the boys. But it didn't feel unsafe and it didn't feel overprotected. It just felt a nice balance. As I've said before, the army were there and you knew they were army. The police, I suppose the national police from outside of Paris were brought in, and they sort of had a different air about them, almost like they were lost, not knowing what was going on. And the local police, you see them all the time, and sort of, 2s and 3s, and they're all hanging out, chatting with each other, having a cigarette on their phones, makes no odds. Do you feel safe knowing they're there? It's that visible presence. And we hear reports throughout the courses of years of incidents that have taken place, and yes, things are going to happen. If you're determined to make something happen, it will happen. But the police have always been there within minutes, taking care of the situations. So hats off and caps doffed to the French police. Before the games, the naysayers were vastly visible and audible. Paris residents were planning on being away and voicing their negativity regarding everything Olympic-based. Accommodation increased prices 3 times over. Travel fares escalated to try and capitalise on the games. And just before the Olympics started, Paris was empty and the hotels dropped their prices and airfares were slashed. Then, with the train disruption, the fares were increased temporarily until it was all fixed. During the Olympics, the Seine was fine, very little additional crime. Influencers pretty much force-fed us on Instagram with all their exploits, expat patriotism and advantageous living positions. Some kept true to their word and escaped as they normally would do during this time, whilst others kept their neutrality and stayed. And in the cliché of Love Island, they stayed true to themselves. The comedian Olivier Giraud, with How to Become Parisian, really nailed the French position on one of his Instagram posts, which I'm going to attach as a link in the show notes. He practically owned up to his misconceptions, and for that, I praise you heavily. So back to the Seine. It was very touch and go the whole way through. Yes, a few issues right at the wrong time, but he got through it. My issues are these. Can they continue with the clean-up and keep it available for swimmers? Even temporarily for the summer, maybe just the Paris beaches, the Paris plage. Secondly, my other concern is more of a scientific one. They were reporting about the levels of E. coli, but what about the other levels of bacteria that could linger? What testing is being conducted, and what are they using to clean the water? Chemicals may have a long-lasting effect, but nobody reports on these types of things until it's too late. I wouldn't get into the Thames at Greenwich or Westminster, but maybe a tributary much further beyond Windsor. I wouldn't go blindly into the Seine after such a short time of a quick fix, not unless it was the really shallow part. Okay, so on to the medals, and yes, they contain a part of the Eiffel Tower, but don't worry, it won't be falling down because of this. Each medal contains 0.6 grams of what they call puddle iron that was removed during renovations in the last century. There are a total of 5,084 gold, silver and bronze medals minted by the Monnaie de Paris 100 years after they minted medals for the 1924 Paris Olympics. So, the standings, it's still an issue. Officially, it's based on the number of gold medals won, then the number of silver, followed by bronze, which makes sense. But in theory, the total number of medals won overall also seems to make sense. However, for the Paris Olympics, USA topped the table with 40 gold and a total of 126 medals. They beat China, also with 40 gold, but only 91 medals overall. France were 5th with 16 gold. They won them in the following events: men's canoe slalom, men's BMX racing, women's cross-country mountain biking, men's omnium 4-race cycle track, women's sabre individual, men 100 kg and mixed team judo, men's rugby sevens, men's surfing, men's 200 metre breaststroke, butterfly, individual medley, and 400 metre individual medley, all won by Lyon Marchand. That's the swimming events, not all the previous medals. The women's 67 kg taekwondo, women's individual triathlon, and men's volleyball. Great Britain came in 7th with 14 gold, but one more medal in total than France's 64. The Olympic Village housed 14,215 athletes during the Olympics and will be home to 8,000 athletes during the Paralympics. Up to 60,000 meals a day would have been served, and an always open medical clinic is available. Based around Saint-Denis, it is hoped that after the ceremonies have finished, the village will become a neighbourhood with 2,500 new homes, a student residence, a hotel, a 3-hectare landscaped park, 7 hectares of gardens and parks, 120,000 square metres of offices and city services, and also 3,200 square metres of neighbourhood shops. This will all start to take place in November. A part of the Olympic legacy is to boost the Seine-Saint-Denis region and its residents' quality of life. It has the highest rate of poverty in mainland France and is also in the top 10 of the highest rates of unemployment. All 36,250 primary schools in France are to have a daily 30-minute exercise period. Since 2020, more than 26,000 children have been taught essential swimming skills. The Aquatic Centre in Seine-Saint-Denis will become a multi-sports facility. Both the Champ de Mars Arena and the Eiffel Tower Stadium will be dismantled once the games have all finished. As expected, La Concorde Arena is temporary, but the design of its venue meant that 4 urban sports all shared the same location. Parc des Princes, Stade de France and Paris La Défense will remain, and they'll also revert back to their original hostings of rugby, football, concerts and other cultural events. The mid-sized 8,000-seated capacity Porte de la Chapelle Arena is also staying. It's usually called the Adidas Arena. The South Paris Arena is actually a part of the Porte de Versailles Expo Complex, a place I've previously been to collect my Paris Marathon bib. This is a continually used facility and will continue to be used. Finally, Yves du Manoir Stadium is the only venue in France to host events for 2 separate Olympic Games, being obviously 2024 and 1924. After the Olympics is over, the newly developed areas will home the French Hockey Federation as well as have areas devoted to football, rugby and athletics. Now, when I first told people that I was going to the Paris Olympics, they'd look at me and they'd go, "Paul, were tickets easy to obtain?" Well, I'll answer that, as I did with them. Yes and no. If I would have gone by myself, it wouldn't have been too much of an issue. I would have simply bought my 3 compulsory tickets in the first round and be done with. However, as a dad of 2 and a boyfriend of 1, 4 of us were going to go. This meant that my limited financial resources were going to get stretched nearly as much as when I took the boys and my uncle to Ibiza to celebrate my marathon run and my marathon studies. I waited for my invite to the second round of ticket purchases, and after asking Nev and the boys what they wanted to watch, I worked my little logistical brain to the max and found the events, dates and times that I felt would work best for us. Paris warned that the transit may take up to 4 hours between the local venues. So next came the provisional Eurostar bookings. Yeah, if I'd have waited, I may have got them cheaper, but I also may have not got them. Now, that was a risk I wasn't prepared to take. So next came the provisional accommodation bookings. If I'd have waited, I may have got them cheaper, but again, I also ran the risk of not getting them. Eurostar run a strange pricing policy whereby the seat prices start high, drop low, then escalate again. The accommodation prices immediately went through the roof by 3 times the regular amount that I'd pay for when I'd normally book a family room. So as a result, we ended up going slightly further afield for a few days. Insert long story here. If I'd have known that things weren't going to be as hectic or frenetic as I'd first expected, I'd have booked the sporting tickets, waited for the cheaper Eurostar tickets, and then much nearer the time booked the accommodation. But as I like to be prepared, have things confirmed, and also be reliant on a month-to-month financial situation, I did what I did with the best financial intentions. That said, if I'd have been able to locate all of my Navigo passes, that's mine, Nev's and the boys, I could have topped up at the €1.90 price instead of having to deal with either the €4 price or the Olympic Zone 1 to 5 daily pass for €32, which if you bought for more than one day, you may well have got called out as they had to be used on consecutive days. Lessons learned. I'm now waiting to see if the prices do return after the Olympics has finished as they proposed. I'm also waiting quite nervously for the continually proposed new ETIAS and EES schemes. Now, the ETIAS hasn't actually been mentioned by many people because they think it's best to deliver bad news in 2 goes. The EES will mean that no more passport stamps are going to be placed into your passport if you're travelling from outside the EU. And the ETIAS means one has to pay €7 to cross EU borders for 3 years, but not for more than 90 days out of 180, which also applies to the EES. So if the EES monitors our movements and we don't get passport stamps, and the ETIAS is where we don't need a visa, why do we need our passport? But this isn't about the Olympics. Well, not until we go to the Winter Olympics in 2030 that are going to be based in Nice. And that, my friends, are 2 episodes right there. ETIAS and maybe, hopefully, the Winter Olympics down in Nice, venturing to a part of France that I've never been to, and I suspect up until 2030 would never have been to. What did I think of the closing ceremony? Well, I'm now totally off script, as can be heard by me moving my paper away from my desk. The closing ceremony, it was alright, it wasn't anything major. Yeah, that was a deep exhalation. There was a lot of stage work. They had the athletes doing their sort of parade, the flag waving as they walk in, everyone's waving and having a party time, which is nice. In theory, that's what should have taken place on a regular opening ceremony, but it happened at the closing of the Stade de France. Yeah, it was okay. I haven't been particularly impressed by any opening or closing ceremonies for quite a few Olympics now. I don't know what I expect, but what I see, I am generally left underwhelmed by. Don't get me wrong, Paris was nice, but to me, there was just something missing. I don't know what. The closing ceremony, again, it just, maybe because it's too big, too grand an experience to feel it through a TV screen. I don't know, but when you think about the millions of people that are watching rather than those that are in the venues and the stadiums at the time. One thing I think I did like was the whole Tom Cruise thing. That was quite nice. And then it zoomed over to LA once he'd gotten his motorbike and you know, obviously he did the Mission Impossible thing coming down, and yeah, landing was quite nicely controlled. But so he's jumped on the motorbike and he zoomed off, and the torches then ended up in America, and it's made its way to the Hollywood sign, which actually I like the look of, because they added the rings to the 00 of the wood of Hollywood and made it the Olympic rings. That was a nice little touch. Thank you, Tom Cruise. And ended up in the beach in LA, and yeah, they had Red Hot Chili Peppers and a couple of other people. It ended up with Snoop Dogg, and it just felt, that side of things, being in America, to me it felt very, very low-key. Now, I know it's not the opening ceremony, it's just a handing over the torch. I think everything was pretty much flat at that point, which is wrong. It should have been more party atmosphere, especially if you want to keep the momentum going for the Paralympics. Talking to Paralympics, I did look at taking Nev and the boys over for the day to Paris to watch the wheelchair rugby, because we did the rugby sevens. I thought, why not? Tickets, €15 each. That's great. That's not a problem at all. I can get us there, get us back, all on the Saturday. Happy days. Then I looked at the Eurostar tickets, and oh my days, it would have come to £800 to go there and back for the day. As much as I love my boys, as much as I appreciate wheelchair rugby, I can't do that. So I will be watching it on telly as and when I get the chance. And for all you listeners out there, I think it's time for Rory to sing us out.
Coffee Pot Conversations.
A big thank you to Nev, Rory and Jasper for coming with me to the city of Paris for the Paris Olympics 2024. A big thank you to the International Olympic Committee. Big thank you to Paris. Big thank you to the volunteers and the athletes. A big thank you to the police, the army, the emergency services. Did I mention the volunteers? Big thank you to those on the metro system, on the public transport system. Big thank you to those that stayed in Paris. Big thank you to the workers, not necessarily surrounding the Olympics, although thank you to you guys as well. But thank you to those in the restaurants and the shops that kept the city going. While I'm thanking everybody, thank you to you. You, listening. Thank you. Without you, I'd be talking to nobody. So thank you. Okay. I think that's enough thank yous, but hey, you can never thank enough people enough time. So thank you, one and all. And talking of thank yous, Jasper, thank you.
Coming up on Coffee Pot Conversations.
As you know, this is a very organic podcast, so once more I have a slight change of plan. It's going to be an episode that I hadn't planned on doing, but a little bit special for me because it's a special episode. So it will still be 2.5. I'm not going to give it a title yet. You need to wait for that, which is, for those of you listening along with me, it's only going to be 2 weeks. For those of you that are binge playing, well, it's just the next episode. And for those of you that are flicking through wondering which episode to start with or which one do you want to listen to, you're not even going to know it's the next one. It will just be the one that you're going to choose. So that's exciting. And that's episode 2.5. You know what 2.5 means, don't you, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs? It means we're halfway through. 2.10, the best bits coming up. Send in your suggestions to thebestbits@anenglishmaninparis.blog. Let me know if you watched the Olympics. 2.4 at anenglishmaninparis.blog. Let me know if you want a shout out at anenglishmaninparis.blog. You're feeling this vibe yet? If you want someone's birthday mentioned, birthday at anenglishmaninparis.blog. If you just want to have a chat with me, email me, coffeepot at anenglishmaninparis.blog. Don't forget, keep tuned in to the podcast. There's also my Instagram account, which is An Englishman in Paris blog. You've also got my blog, which no one reads, but don't you worry, you're going to be able to listen to it soon. And that's anenglishmaninparis.blog. Anyway, enough of this old chit-chattery, bantery. Is it really banter? There's no one else paying attention. But wait, it's time for this.
Coffee Pot Conversations.